Which commandments and scriptures does Christmas break? Part 3. Here we go. Today we're going to talk about mixing the holy with the profane. Christmas is a big mishmash of mixing the holy with the profane and squeezing them all together, mixing them all up. Have you ever noticed in the Old Testament that there's all these scriptures about not mixing linen and wool, not mixing different kinds of seed, not mixing cattle, all of these different things about mixing, right? There's a spiritual understanding to understand there. A different seed in your field and it's growing up wheats and tares. That's people that can grow up to be wheats or tares, but you can also mix seed of ideas. So if you're planting seeds of ideas, you can grow up wheat and tares. But the big one here that we really need to touch on is mixing metals and creating dross in the metal, because that is a warning in the book of Revelation. Mark 7:7, I just want to show you guys that this concept, I'm going to talk about some of the Old Testament stuff, but I want you to understand that this concept is clearly expressed in the New Testament out of the mouth of Jesus himself as he quotes the Old Testament and saying, "This people respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." What is that in today's English? They are talking the talk, but they ain't walking the walk, okay? And in vain, because they're talking the talk and not walking the walk, they're being vain, they do worship me, teaching as teachings the commands of men. Okay? So forsaking the command of Elohim, you hold fast to your tradition. Okay, so Jesus himself is actually saying that when you forsake the commands of God, the command of Elohim, and you hold fast to your traditions while you ignore the commands of God, you are actually doing a bad thing. That's what he's saying here, okay? We covered this in video 1, but I needed to touch on it again because we're going to talk about mixing the holy with the profane, because there's a whole lot of that going on. Ezekiel 22 is a whole big chapter about all of the different things that the priests and the priesthood had been doing that had become so idolatrous. Instead of looking at Jehovah's commands, they were adding in all this extra stuff and they were mixing it all in, and everything had just become so tainted and full of nonsense that it was just dross to him. We'll get into dross in a minute. But one thing he says in Ezekiel 22 is, "You have despised that which is set apart to me, and you have profaned my Sabbaths." Okay? Jehovah has Sabbaths. He has meeting times for his people. And when you despise those things and profane them and change the dates of them and move them and do all sorts of stuff to them, you are despising what is set apart to him, what is holy to him. That's what set apart means, holy to him. And you are touching things that you definitely shouldn't be touching. So he says in Ezekiel 22:19, "Therefore, thus said Master Jehovah, because of this you have become dross." Dross is when metal gets all these impurities in it and it's no longer refined and pure and good. It just becomes kind of icky. And that's mentioned in Revelation 3 with the Laodicea church. The Laodicea church thought they were rich. And they thought they had been made rich, and so they didn't have to refine themselves. They didn't have to watch out for idolatry because they were good. They thought they were good. And they never checked the scriptures. They never refined themselves. And so they were in very big danger of being called wretched, pitiful, naked, and blind. And what did Yeshua, Jesus, recommend that they do? He recommended that he buy from him, Yeshua, Jesus, gold refined in the fire so that he could become rich and have white garments so that you could become dressed and that you're no longer going to be ashamed. What is all that dross that's been put into the metal? It's all the impurities that have been floating around in the metal and they have not been refined out. The metal becomes impure, just like the gold in Revelation 3 that's used to describe the Revelation 3 church of Laodicea, the lukewarm church. There's nothing new under the sun. These patterns repeat. The garbage gets mixed in and the metal becomes dross and needs refinement. Okay, let's look at a really good example of this. Profane, profane, holy, profane, profane, profane. Okay, so we've got profane, 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 and holy. Holy image from God. And some more just images. You get the point. Okay, I get it. I have a lot of sentimental feelings about some of these images too, but the thing about it is mixing the holy, the understanding of Yeshua, Sukkoting with us. Sukkot is an actual feast that was commanded by God in the scriptures. That's the command. Now that command happens in the fall. It doesn't happen in December, and there's no precedent for putting it in December and moving it. That is touching his holy thing. And then you have the image of his Sukkot, which is his Sukkot shelter with the manger and Yeshua being born, and you're mishmashing that with all of these other images that have nothing to do with Jesus, okay? That's mixing the holy with the profane. I think that particular house decor is a really good representation of the percentage breakdown of this season. There's about 5% of Jesus and people actually understanding and talking about Jesus, and there's about 95% of the world mixing dross. Just dross. This season is 95% dross and very, very little scripture, and the scripture that is included is at the wrong season. It's at the wrong time. So Isaiah 22 and Revelation 3 talked about the dross. What is the blessed thing? What is the blessed thing that we can do? We can find that in Isaiah 56. And he tells us exactly how he wants us to worship before him on his special days. Jesus was quoting Isaiah 29 when he was talking about people and the priest teaching the people to worship God in vanity. But in Isaiah 56, there is a huge section, almost a whole chapter, that talks about really, really good worship that is blessed. And thus says Yehovah Elohim, guard right ruling and do righteousness, for near is my deliverance to come and my righteousness to be revealed. So his righteousness is going to be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who becomes strong in it, guarding the Sabbath, lest he profane it, and guarding his hand from doing any evil. So those who become strong in guarding his Sabbath, and remember his holy days, his feasts and festivals are also a Sabbath day. So those people that are guarding that image, they are going to be blessed. Blessed is the man who does this and becomes strong in it. But wait, you're going to say, that's not for me, that's for Israel. Well, Yehovah thinks differently. And let not the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to Yehovah speak, saying, Yehovah has certainly separated me from his people. So you're not supposed to say that, and I'm not supposed to let you say that, because I want to be the strong person who's guarding his Sabbaths. Okay, where do we find the gold in the temple? The gold in the temple is the lampstand or the menorah, and that's what creates the fire, the light that goes on in the temple day in and day out. Now, where our bodies are the temple now, right? So we want to light up the temple. That's why Yeshua says, don't hide your lampstand, put it out on a window so people can see your lampstand. Now, did you know that there's 7 feasts and there's 7 branches of menorah? Shall I repeat that? There's 7 biblical feasts and there's 7 branches of menorah, 7 lights, 7 chances to shine your light. The biblical feasts walk you through the salvation and sanctification process. Every year that you go through the biblical feasts, every time that you keep a Sabbath, you learn more about your sanctification and your salvation and your relationship, and you learn more about Yeshua. You get to know him. You get that intimacy. Because the thing is, you're learning about the things in Scripture rather than learning about Santa Claus. You know what I'm saying? But you think, hey, Jenny, there's no way that the devil convinced the entire church to do false feasts, right? Right? Well, check out Daniel 7:25. It's about the Antichrist that intends to change the appointed times, feast days, and law, the commandments. Then check out Isaiah 14, talking about our enemy. It's talking about how he wants to put his throne above the stars of God, and so that he will also sit on the mount of the congregation. But let's dig deeper into that Hebrew. Upon the mount of the congregation is that word moed. Moed means appointment. It's an appointed time to meet with Yehovah. It's a festival and an assembly. Let's recap. We have a worldwide Sabbath that is pretty much celebrated by everyone. That's on the wrong day, in the wrong season, and full of dross. And we've been warned that the Antichrist is going to try to change the Sabbaths and change where the congregation assembles to worship Yehovah, to redirect worship onto himself. Houston, we have a problem. In the next video, I'm going to break down why I can confidently say that this is a counterfeit of the commanded feast of Sukkot. when you look at the dates that the Christmas feast Sabbaths land on, it's Clare's Day.